welcome to Chronicles of the Phoenix.
The day is here.
We're so excited. Tell them why.
Molly's here.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I am so excited to be here.
We've been talking about you coming here for since we met you at the Tri-State CoJourn conference.
Yeah.
And we had that, I would say, spiritual connection.
Mm-hmm.
Spiritual.
Instant bond.
I remember when we first came and your booth was already set up and it was so beautiful. And we were like, we can't screw up and put our brand new sign banner that we had made with our giant faces on them. Which I'll offer, as new business owners, where you have to brand everything with your faces on it. And where do we put this where we don't become blockers? Because that feels not nice.
It wouldn't be nice. So we tried our best.
We did try our best.
And we noticed that right away.
You
and
did.
It's we love our booth mates. They're thinking about the people next to them. It was so lovely.
Before we even met you.
Yeah. And then you were even more awesome than we thought you might have been based on your beautiful setup.
Oh, well, thank you. It's great. Women entrepreneurs, first-time conference attendees.
Yes.
Backing each other, going through it together.
So Molly Keehn from CoJourn came all the way from Western Mass to join us today. Do you want to tell us about CoJourn and your journey here?
Sure. Yeah. I have to say, we're right near the ocean, and Courtney and Aaron took me for a little spin to the beach before we started this recording. So thank you for that. I feel like the trip, is already made. Time with you both, a little salt water.
Well, and we took you to our favorite little spot, Cafe and B Bakery. But also, should we tell them about our secret mission that we did?
Oh my gosh, please do. That was one of my favorite moments of all time already.
So my daughter might kill us.
Uh-oh.
But first shift on the job, and I need to capture all the first, right? As a mom, you have to capture all the first. So
we took a ride
to the beach.
We're Addie's lifeguarding.
And we said to the gate guard, we just need to turn around. And then I thought, radical honesty. Because he said, turn around right here so I can watch you turn around. And I thought, radical honesty. That's not going to get it done.
Mm-mm.
I said, can I just take a picture of my daughter? And he smirked.
Yes, he
said, yeah. You can. Because he looked at us and he was like, these are not beachgoers.
Mm-hmm. They're not in our outfits.
Not in our outfits. We are beachgoers, but not today.
Not today.
So we went up and we saw my beautiful little cherub sitting there on the beach guarding. And we had to do a lap, turned around. Molly got out of the car, snapped some covert pictures because
Addie doesn't
know you.
The best.
Not a wiser. Got it from a scrapbook.
And in Aaron's defense, you did not have this on an agenda. You did not lead with it. After lunch, I said, hey, you all, how far is the beach from here? When I come back east from Western Mass, I always like to see the ocean. And then you did light up a little, Aaron.
I did.
We could take you right now.
I did say that.
I said, my daughter's lifeguarding.
And so yes.
It developed as we went.
It did.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And as a 7, Enneagram 7, I love my spontaneous missions.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
It was perfect.
It was.
I think it went great.
I think it did. And I love that you two were right on for the ride. So it was really good. Yeah.
So we had a great warm-up for the podcast interview.
Yes, we did.
And you would like to hear about what CoJourn is. Yes. So at its core, the definition is CoJourn's a program for compassionate and judgment-free accountability partnerships. And what that actually means is we train people to be accountability partners, to hold each other accountable for goals or movement they want to make in their lives using a model that I co-created and a framework that keeps it structured and helps both their connection and their follow-through.
I love that. And I think when we were talking with you at the conference and making the connections between the values that you have as a person, but also as what you've built CoJourn on as a foundation, and then what we've built our Phoenix Rise on, and the work that we do in our private practices in supporting people on their journey towards connection and living full lives. It just felt like there was so much synergy in the work that we do, which is why we're so excited to have this conversation and see, how much more through the conversation the marriage can be,
Yeah. I think it definitely was sort of like an instant connection ourselves that we all had, and then recognizing the overlap, but yet coming from sort of these different worlds in a way. I'm excited to kind of see where our conversation goes today and help everyone listening kind of understand just the beauty of all of this, like how it applies and how they can apply it to their lives and what they might get out of it if they choose to become a part of it.
So Molly, can you share a little bit about your background and how you found your way to CoJourn?
Sure. Yeah. So I have my background academically, I was studied social psychology, and then my master's was in college student development and counseling. So I a little bit of counseling focus, but it was really about higher ed. I worked in student activities as a program coordinator. And then I became really interested in intergroup dialogues on race and racism. And I participated in a dialogue that I always say kind of changed my trajectory. And I became really interested in learning all I can about dialogue as a way of communication, and particularly thinking about social justice issues. So I started a doctoral program, which ended up being a 7-year journey in social justice education at UMass Amherst. And CoJourn was born during my 5th year of that graduate program.
So cool.
And I, side note, I just started playing in a band, and a family band with a guy named Carl and 2 of his brothers and his dad. And I play accordion, sort of advanced beginner accordion. And Carl was lead singer. And so we were friends at the time, completely separate from my academic world and my work. And about 5.5 years in, I was in the part of my comprehensive exams, which is really challenging and really isolating experience. It's like a lot of solo writing. And I'd always struggled with anxiety, but it had become debilitating for me. And I was seeing an amazing counselor for many years. She got me through my graduate program. And I knew at the time what I needed to do to take control of my anxiety. And I just wasn't able to get myself to follow through and actually do it. And at the time, Carl and I were friends, and we ended up developing an accountability partnership. He was struggling with, some of his own struggles. And I discovered just from conversations that if I told Carl I would meditate for 10 minutes a day every morning, it was like a miracle. And then we followed up the next week. I actually did it. And I had been trying to get myself to start a mindfulness practice, meditation practice for years. And I suddenly noticed I was doing it. And it was such a simple, small thing. And then fast forward to that January, it was around New Year's, and we were talking about New Year's resolutions. And I had all these big ideas. I was like, I don't even remember. And he's made fun of me. And he's like, Molly, there's no way you're going to be able to do all of those things at once. And somehow through that conversation, we decided to become accountability partners and basically created CoJourn, but we had no idea it would ever be a thing. It was just for us. And we both decided to pick an area for the year and check in every week. And we kind of put a model together based on my own research, my own background, some of his work, and just common sense of what we needed at the time. And I worked on quieting myself, which was what I really needed at the time, or like to working with my anxiety. I had also had 4 different jobs. Yeah, I was working small assistantships all over the place and just needed to make some changes. And so that was, I can share more, but that was sort of where the very beginning of CoJourn started.
That's really interesting. I love when things start, and I think that that's sort of like the entrepreneurial journey where it's sort of like an accidental thing that becomes purposeful and you see a need, so it becomes a seed that starts something beautiful. You know, like I think that's often what happens. Or would you describe it that you built it and then deconstructed it after to create the model? Or, and at that January, were you like, let's develop a model and then work the model that way?
I would say we just did what was intuitive for us, right? And we made a contract. Then we just are kind of nerdy and we're like, oh my gosh, let's actually do this. Let's meet Wednesdays at 5 and let's, and we had all these different like parts we were adding to it. At the time, I would say pretty confidently, we were both like a hot mess, just in a lot of ways in life, right? And I knew I couldn't bear to have one more thing that I wasn't doing right. I wasn't measuring up on. I wasn't feeling a failing on. And so one of the core rules at the time of what we were doing is that it had to be compassionate and non-judgment and the belief we're all doing the best. So that was one, so it was intuitive, but I knew. I just written a book chapter on the art of listening and active listening, right? So we made that part of it. Like you have to really listen to your partner as they create their goals. And I'll say at the time, Carl had recently moved back to Massachusetts from New York City and was struggling with a lot of chronic arm pain as a professional musician. He had been and had to change careers and was going through a major life transition too and struggling. And he talks about it very freely in the book we co-wrote. So I feel like I can share his story. But usually, part of our CoJourn rules were it had to be confidential between the two of us, what we were working on. But so he worked on connecting more with myself and others and was making goals around that. I was working on quieting myself, and we developed sort of an overall broad thing for the year. And then each week we would make about 3 little goals to move toward it while holding ourselves in our weekly meeting with these little different pieces that we put into place. And I'll say it was sort of a miracle that year. It feels like exaggerated because it's so simple, but there was something about having a buddy working on something with me. He was struggling and then would succeed on his little goals. And so there was like a piece of contagion, positive contagion, where I'm like, well, Carl did his goals. I want to do my goals too. And support of each other. And we became really close friends. And I suddenly was able to start making those shifts I needed to get my anxiety under control. And I had stopped my writing process. I was going to drop out for about 1.5 years. And then I got the ground under me, a little bit more stability. I was still working with my therapist too, but the accountability support was that added piece that helped me move. And we finished a year together. We were like, oh my gosh, that was really powerful. And so then we started telling friends, we're like, let's try it with someone else. And so I did it with my cousin and he did it with a friend. And then we started telling friends and family, like, we did this experiment last year and it was really cool. And then all these graduate students started wanting to do it because they're like, wow, Molly actually defended her dissertation. I wouldn't know what this is. Yeah. And so really through word of mouth, and experimentation. And then I'm a qualitative researcher. And so I did a lot of interviewing of people using it and we kind of honed the model, but it really has not changed very much from that January conversation.
That's awesome.
That's so cool. And I know that in the book you reference Brene Brown a lot and her being a qualitative researcher too. So how did she inspire you?
I love that question. So my dissertation was on the role of storytelling in student learning about race and racism in particular. And it was at a time when there was a push to start moving things to be more virtual. This is pre-pandemic, right? And I was really looking at the impact of human connection on learning, growth, and change. And at that moment, I was arguing for embodied human connection, like in the real time, real space. And I had dove into some of the literature on the impacts of technology on connection. in the framing of my work. And so when Carl and I were developing CoJourn, it was a time there were a ton of accountability apps and different ways to follow through on goals, which can work for some people. But we were really clear that we wanted it to be like support each other in a synchronous, real-time way on the phone. And then a lot of my work with CoJourn and intergroup dialogue, all of it is based on reciprocal vulnerability. And so I think Brene Brown's work really has impacted that from the start of helping develop those types of relationships.
Yeah, which is so cool because I think people had, at least for a certain period of time, really engaged in accepting the importance of accountability and goal setting, right? And there were ways to look at that. But the piece that I feel like stands out so much about this is having this clear way to support like this deeper connection, which always takes vulnerability. But it's sort of that missing link for me, the difference between setting a goal and trying your best to behaviorally do that on your own, or how it just seems like it must shift so much when that connection is also one of the drivers of the change.
Yeah. And what I'm curious about is I work with a number of teenagers now. And with your work at the university level, what are you seeing with CoJourn and the technology piece and the connection and how they're able to, in real time, do the synchronous connection? Like, how are you seeing that when so much is virtual and online and text?
I think there's two threads there. The one is we had developed CoJourn before the pandemic, but the book came out in 2019, and then our organizational programs really started during the pandemic. And because it was synchronous time, you could do it on the phone or via, we didn't have Zoom. I didn't have Zoom then, or like Skype or what, or in person. And so that was sort of a piece where people were able to connect in those ways as opposed to text-based, connection. The other piece around young people, so my, background's in college student development, and I teach undergraduate students. I've been so hungry for them to do CoJourn because research shows one of the most recent Cigna studies, 59% of Americans report loneliness, and it was 20% in 1980. Like, it's really skyrocketed.
That's a huge
3
jump.
times. And the latest studies found 79% of 18 to 24-year-olds reported loneliness. So that generation is so I really believe that having accountability partner to build relationship connection with is so important. And they haven't come to it very easily. So when we work with graduate students, people sign up really easily. Undergraduates have, when it's a choice, haven't leaned into that choice. I have my own theories as to why, but I don't have the full answer on that. But I co-taught a first-year seminar based in CoJourn at UMass Amherst 2 falls ago, where it was part of the course, and everyone was paired with an accountability partner. It was called Be Well at UMass, I think. So it was really about well-being. And they would make well-being goals with their accountability partner for their first year. And it was sort of hard to tell how it was going throughout. And then their final papers made me weep. Like, it was so incredible to see what difference it made for them to have a buddy that they met with in person. And they all said, I would never have done this if it wasn't for the class. But then they were able to reap the benefits.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we do tend to feel like connection should be natural, but it's not.
Yeah.
Why do you think people stay on the surface?
Well, I think what we talked about with vulnerability, I think, is a big part of it. I mean, and I think there's so many reasons for that, whether it's our ability to manage, kind of our own difficult, deep experiences and knowing how and when to share that. I think that there's so much that also plays into disconnection. And there's a lot, I think when you mentioned technology, like there's a lot of separation. And when you look at what has transpired technically from the 80s to that next stat, right? And you think of how the computer, all this stuff, like we've gone light years from even when that started, but I still think of like the first days like on the internet and like how all of a sudden things shifted from that play outdoorsy generation till now everything is done through a computer. So I guess in that sense, that's a piece of what I'm thinking, is that there's a lot about the way we live now that I think keeps things surface and allows us to gatekeep how we show up. When I think of our teenagers a lot, and I think of this too, is there's so much that goes into like the view of yourself and how others view you. And I think social media has really blown that up. I think a big piece of it is just the way that we end up holding back on being vulnerable and observing ourselves and really trying to create this certain version of ourselves and not necessarily living into our own authenticity that gets in the way.
That authenticity.
Love that. Yeah. I would just build on that, Courtney, because I'm in full agreement with what you said. And Vivek Murthy, who was the Surgeon General of the U.S., who wrote a book about loneliness, and he was one of the first in the U.S. to really name it as a public health crisis. And talking about young people, he said that they moved from having confidants to connections. And you think about having 1,000 friends on Facebook, but then no one to call with a broken heart, right? And that
interesting.
That shift in the nature of the relationships. So you might have more quantity, but it can be more challenging to build the quality. And then the one other study I want to mention is the Robert Waldinger study at Harvard, which was the longest longitudinal study on happiness and well-being. Probably heard, It has different names, Grant study, but they found the number one predictor of happiness and long-term well-being in life is having close connected relationships where we can really show ourselves more than money, fame, all of the other parts. And so I see it in myself with the shift to social media, right? I can scroll on my phone on Instagram and I feel kind of dead inside. And if I would have maybe just called a friend and had a chat, like I might have experienced it very differently.
Well, I think about collecting friends and the number, but like being in a room with 50 people that are your friends, but feeling alone. Right. You know, and I think that that's often the experience. And I remember, you know, I graduated with my undergrad in 2001, and I was one of the first online early versions of that, where I was in Washington State going to school in Virginia. And I remember being baffled at 20 years old at how people were talking to professors and each other in that setting. And there was still more accountability there because some of the students the people in Virginia were in person and you were in class at your cohort with people. So there was some accountability. If you were being a jerk in class, there were people there that were like, dude, like what, where you weren't just individually behind a screen with zero accountability. And I remember being at that time being like, dang, like this is where now it's like, you can just really have zero accountability behind a screen with a completely different screen name. And the alienation and isolation that you can develop from that. And I think that that's one of the things that like our resilient circle has proven to be a small but mighty group at this point that we get feedback about, is that the sense of connection and truly knowing each other and having real raw conversations. And I think that's some of the things that I'll talk to sometimes to some of my clients about, is like feeling like not being seen or known, even by family. Like I don't feel like anybody truly knows me, but also not knowing how to reveal that part of themselves. And that was one of the things that I loved in reading the book, was that this gave a really clear outline of how to create a level of intimacy through safety for people that maybe never were taught that or didn't know how to do that. And what I loved too was that you and Carl, being different genders, were able to do that together in a platonic relationship, because I feel like men in particular, men and boys, are definitely less comfortable, I think, in having that level of relationship with people.
I think there's also a piece of CoJourn's based on like two foundations, and one is follow through and, you know, getting support and accountability to follow through on the things that we want in our life. And the other is connection, right? And building a deeper connection. And often not everyone, but people enter a CoJourn accountability partnership because they have a goal they want to follow through on, right?
Sure.
And they get a buddy and they're paired with them by us or by organization, or they choose someone. And then the connection just happens naturally. Because if I meet with you, Courtney, weekly for 30 minutes is what CoJourn, using our structure, our agenda, and I create little micro goals for my week and I report on them on last week's, and you hold me in self-compassion and non-judgment and all the active listen to me. Suddenly, I might show a little more of myself. Maybe it'll be pretty not that risky the first few weeks, right?
Yep.
But then something happens in my life. My beloved cat dies, or I'm navigating a challenge at work. Maybe I make a goal about that. And then suddenly maybe you do that as well because you've seen me show a little bit more of myself. And the trust is built over time. And so that's not actually like CoJourn, we don't go out there saying you're doing it to build this deep relationship with someone. It's more a byproduct, which I think is some of the appeal.
Oh, that's nice.
And then people experience it in an embodied way. And at our closing events, often we move to tears when they're asked to share about this appreciation for their partner. And I do think it's hard to even put into words, but that power of human-to-human connection that many of us are so hungry for. And
it's that power of reciprocity.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me. And I remember, there's so many ways that I think people benefit from that. But I get what you mean about the byproduct side of it. Like, just as a piece of what comes along. I remember that when I was young. What did we have when we were growing up there? It was like peer helpers or something and peer advocates. And I remember that was the first taste I had. That's when I knew I wanted to be a therapist. I was like in 8th grade.
Oh, interesting.
Because I got invited, like peers had to name, write down who you go to if you want to talk to somebody or whatever. And then they invited us to all, and we did this like retreat, and we were like 13 years old, right? So definitely weird ages.
Wow.
Like, strange time to be vulnerable. Everyone was starting to have that little that figure themselves out and how do I want to show up. And it's just it was such a perfect age for it, I felt like. But the group of us did like a weekend long retreat, and it was like maybe 15 kids, right, in our grade. And that was the feeling. I remember that feeling of just like, what is this? Like, I'm so connected to people, but it was because we shared like some of the hardest stuff about ourselves. We got to know people. We did like trust exercises and all things that we can do in like workshops and stuff. But there's something really special about the way that it was crafted and designed to facilitate that. But none of us went in, like you're saying, with that as the goal. The goal was really like, you are people that other people trust. So we want you to be out there, like making sure if someone needs help or wants, you to lend an ear, that you're able to do that. We'll give you the skills to do it. So we're like, cool, I want to do that. But the whole, looking back now, the whole creation was based on this group of kids recognizing the value of connection with each other and that vulnerability. So you just sparked that memory when you said that, of just what that feels like. It's so
cool.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Amazing program.
It was awesome. Yeah. Really awesome.
And that's so fun. I didn't know that's what sparked your therapist journey.
It was. Yeah, it was. That was it. From then on, I was like, this is interesting. And I remember I was like that kid that wanted to like go see the school social worker just to check it out. Like, what do you do here? Oh, my friend wants to come too. Can I come with you? Like, what are you guys doing? I want to play. But I loved it. So that was like a launching point for that, I think. And then when you get into high school, they had more of the like older kid version of it. So I did that too.
That's really fun. So Molly, can you share, you've sort of woven it into the conversation, but can you share the specific key elements of CoJourn?
Sure. Yeah. So how it works is that it's a paired accountability partnership, and you create what we call a guiding theme, an overarching area that you want to work on over time. It started as a year, and that's a long time for people to commit to. So we find 12 weeks is sort of a more reasonable amount. And so mine was quieting myself. And then each week you make about 3 little micro goals related to your overarching guiding theme over time. And then when you check in with your partner weekly for about a half hour, you use what we call the 8 core components of CoJourn. And I think that's what you were asking about, Erin, which are they're pieces that are all, research backed, simple, but can be really difficult. Parts that we argue are what make it work, or different, unique from just a more casual accountability partnership. That, people do that all the time. They have accountability buddies, but I think that's the part that makes CoJourn unique, and each part plays a role in supporting the team to be as successful as possible as partners. The first three are related to connection, and those include peer support, active listening, and confidentiality. And I'll say one of the pieces around peer support is that you're in charge of basically holding space for your partner, cheerleading them on, but you are not supposed to coach or advise them in any way. And it's really about letting people know what their own journey is and making their own goals. And so it means you can pair with anybody working on anything because you don't have to have expertise in the area that they're working on. And then you practice active listening while they're developing their goals. So giving them your full undivided attention and really trying to be present for them. We instruct CoJourn participants, you would record goals for your partner for them, which amplifies your motivation to listen. I was looking at, for the listeners, I'm in this incredible office that Aaron and Courtney have, and there are all kinds of quotes on the wall, but they have a piece by Glennon Doyle connected to the book Untamed. Mm-hmm. But there's a quote on here, and it really reminded, I was just reading it before we started recording. And it is, "This life is mine alone. So I have stopped asking people for directions to places they have never been." And I was like, what a perfect quote to illustrate the importance of peer support. Because often in accountability partnerships, that's where tangles can come. If someone's like, well, Molly, you really should just do this, this, and this. And that might be their path, right? Not my own journey. We do allow for, you can ask your partner's advice or you can offer advice, but it needs to be, you need to ask for consent first. And then confidentiality, just keeping it between the two of you, can increase trust and safety. And so those are the three related to the connection part. I can share that other 5 are related to the follow-through part of CoJourn. The first is just accountability. So you're holding each other accountable. One research study found that if you tell someone you're going to do something and you write it down and then you follow up with them later and report on it, you're 76% likely to do it, as opposed to only 35% likely if you don't set that kind of accountability agreement in place. It's the littlest life hack, but I use it all the time outside of CoJourn. I'll call my mom and say, Mom, I promise you I'll spend an hour tonight straightening up my desk area or whatever it is that I'm having to. And then I tell her the next day. And so that's a part of CoJourn. And there's also a distinguishing in the literature between illegitimate accountability and legitimate accountability. And CoJourn is a means of legitimate accountability, which means you're choosing what you want to be held accountable for, and you're choosing who you want to be holding you accountable. Even if you sign up for partner matching, you're still opting in.
Sure.
And it's a reason we argue CoJourn, especially within organizations, can't be mandated for it to work. People need to opt in.
Okay.
Another one of the core components is holding a spirit of celebration. And this is designed to counteract the negativity bias of the brain. I see you lighting up, Courtney. I'm sure you all weave this into your work. And and so it's really about having a mindset of like amplifying that. I'm going to use a real life example. This week, I called my pet insurance company to find out ways to decrease the monthly cost for my pugs by increasing the deductible. I've been putting it off for ages.
Yeah.
And then I told my accountability partner I would do it, and I'm saving $100 a month between the two of them. And just the incredible satisfaction for having actually done it.
Amazing.
Amazing. And I got to celebrate that with my CoJourn partner yesterday morning when we met. And it's such a ridiculous thing that you would never even probably notice. But for anything we're doing, to get a chance to have your partner amplify whatever the micro goal was. The flip side of that is holding, I mentioned this earlier, self-compassionate, non-judgmental approach when we don't reach our goals. And as I described, Carl and I made that part of it because we really needed it, and then discovered, all of the research from Kristen Neff and other people who write, Chris Germer, write about self-compassion and how we're way more likely to move forward toward our goals and keep going if we do hold ourselves with compassion. So in CoJourn, people in our interviews, they say, I don't even have to lie.
Yeah.
It's fair, because they'd be like, I didn't do any of my goals. And then we laugh and reset and look, forward. And then the last one is, there are two more. One is commitment. So with CoJourn, you're making a commitment to a set period of time to meet weekly with your partner, and your partner's counting on it. They're counting on you to show up at that time, which sometimes makes it easier for people to actually show up. Like
Sure.
I said, I'm going to reflect on my goals every Sunday at 4 by myself.
Mm-hmm.
I probably wouldn't really do it. But if I knew, Erin, you're waiting on the Zoom call for me, I would do it. And we even offer people a fun contract. Called a fun contract, because it's not, they can add their own parts. We're going to meet Sundays at 4. We're going to, and then actually sign it. And there's something about making that commitment to yourself and each other that can be powerful. And then finally we encourage people to choose one broad area for change over the set amount of time. It started with Carl making fun of me when I wanted to change 10 things on New Year's. And he's like, and then we really lived into that and having people really go after one area with flexibility. And I think, though, the last thing I'll say, and then we can follow up on any of these, is really that we tell people to make CoJourn their own. Like, they know themselves. And we've had people have 2 guiding themes. Or my sister, who's one of the contributors in our book, she made her goal to just do CoJourn. And she made goals about whatever she wanted. And, she got the byproduct of the connections.
Sure.
People may get their own in any way they want or need.
What do you think would be the hardest for you?
I don't know. I mean, the commitment piece, I like the way it's set up. I think commitment, I need that. I know that already. Like, as you were talking, I think I mentioned this on one of our conversations before we met today. I completely understand the value of like having that partnership for accountability and deadlines and like a time we're meeting and the consistency. That's so important to me, because without that, I just lose sense of time. I am horrible without a deadline, but I also know when it comes to, and I think we talked about this, like I play music. So Bill, the guest we had on in the past, he's one of my bandmates, and I've felt how this type of process almost works in that way, because together we have shared goals, right? Of whether we're like creating certain music together or whatever the project is at the time that we're doing. And I knew it's been a little harder because we actually don't meet as consistently as we used to. But when we had we used to meet every single week. We would do Tuesdays. This was years ago, every Tuesday afternoon. And I knew, like, as I rounded my weekend, I was like, what am I doing for this week? What did we say we were working on? And it was like, it's a creative, fun activity, and we have so much fun with it. And it's not always about like accomplishing something, but I still felt that level of commitment to it, that like, this is still something I love and enjoy and have fun with. And I want to make sure I'm prepared for it. I want to make sure I'm giving my best self here. So I know for me, the commitment piece, while it might be hard, I think it's absolutely necessary. That's something I have to have accountability.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Yeah.
What's your biggest challenge in all that?
I think I love the structure of this. I think it's really helpful. I love the spirit of celebration, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
I think keeping it to a singular area would be tricky for me, because I tend to like to keep adding.
Mm-hmm.
So I think having a partner like Carl to be like, whoa, let's rein it in.
Narrow it down, stop. We're going to do this right now would be really helpful. And honestly, I think the self-compassion piece, because I can be very hard on myself.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was thinking about that one too.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough.
Yeah.
I forget all the like, I could be so mean to myself.
Yeah.
And I think that's, we always create the things we most need.
Yes. Yeah.
But to be able to have my partner reflect back and be like, Molly, don't be so mean to yourself.
Yeah.
And that part has been a gift for me to keep practicing it over the years.
Sure.
How many partners have you had?
9.
9.
Who's been your favorite?
Oh, Erin, how dare you?
I will say, when we first started it, I made a rule that I have to change my partner every year. So I keep learning about the model and seeing how it works with different people and different personalities. And
Smart.
I've done it with people like my very best friend, 2 of actually at different years, my best friends from college. I did it with one during COVID, and it was such a gift to have someone I already had that close, connected, trusting relationship with. And then I did it intentionally with someone I didn't know like hardly well at all, who's a neighbor later. I will say I now usually have 2 CoJourn partners at one time because we've started these spin-off programs. So we have a CoJourn for racial justice model. We made CoJourn for climate action. And whenever I'm working on any of those, I want to be in integrity and be doing it myself. And so I have my one CoJourn partner that's more general CoJourn, where I'm working on creativity, or I've worked on different things every year. And then sort of a specialized CoJourn partner. And those are more 12-week commitments. And those change up more frequently.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sounds so fun.
I'm setting a lot of goals every week.
Yeah. No, but I think that's got to be very rewarding to constantly, like you said, be learning. And it also makes your pool of people, resources of people that truly know you continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger, right? Like, so that you have more people on your phone a friend that you feel like you can dial than just one.
One of my past CoJourn partners called me 2 days ago, and she's like, "Molly, I need to tell you a shame story," and I was like, "Yes, I'm here," whatever. And it was, related to double booking and implications on other people and all this stuff that comes up. And it was so, we're friends anyways. And I do feel like that year of supporting each other made it that we were that type of friend.
Yeah.
Where you could have code word. I'm in that fight, place where I'm about to burst into tears and I need to call somebody who is that person. And we already had that history in place there. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you see a difference between, because I imagine that you've had partners from all different walks of life. Do you see a difference in terms of, I don't know, across the spectrum, age, gender, socioeconomics, like what changes in terms of who receives this? Do you notice anything?
Yeah,
the research?
Both, you mean in terms of both my partners and people we interview?
Yeah.
I think I'm thinking about age and, like my mother's generation, I'm speaking generally, and she's, an older white woman, upper middle class, did not grow up in a therapeutic environment, right? And it was not something that people talked about or did a lot. And CoJourn is very separate from therapy, right? But there's still something about that mutual sharing. And she has been such a supporter. And from the start, she signed up and did it with her former college roommate 40 years later. And they supported each other with CoJourn. And then she did it for a year with a friend. And my mom's a writer, and this was someone from her writers group, and they really deepened their relationship. And they still, this is 4 or 5 years later, talk every Friday morning. They don't do CoJourn anymore, but they still support each other in different ways, but they're not doing it formally. And my mom's partner's husband just died, like maybe a couple months ago. And my mom was saying that she's so glad that they had that baseline of relationship from their year of CoJourn. And the person will call her, and have a place for someone to listen to her grief in a way, like, because of that deeper relationship. And my mom was saying, I wanted to say thank you, Molly, for creating this, because, my friend and I wouldn't have had that if it weren't for CoJourn. And then going back to the young people, and there's some, gender dynamics too, but thinking about my first year seminar, there was like 2 guys who were paired together, and reading one of their papers, this is the one that, one of the ones that made me weep, he was saying, and I think this is the piece about that makes CoJourn unique because of the reciprocity. He said, I didn't realize I wasn't the only one who was homesick.
Wow.
And like navigating the transition to college, and everyone else seems fine and they're partying, and and this is a place where the 2 of them came together every week and showed that little piece to himself and said, and then built this relationship so much that one of them invited the other home for Thanksgiving, and he got to meet his family, and they developed this deeper place where I think it's not something that's commonly shared or talked about, at that age. And then a lot of it's also different fields. You all are, trained in, you both had training in social work, right? Yeah. I know you're both therapists now, and I'm trained in education and more kind of where we talk about feelings and emotions and all that. But then I'll go into an organization, and just do a grounding exercise and mention one thing, and the whole room's feedback in a good way that this is so different from our culture here. Or I think can be a bit of an oversharer maybe, or people aren't used to people sharing, pieces of their life in different cultures and different contexts. So I think different people's training, it might vary. Yeah, that's what I would say off the top of my head around that piece. Do you have any hypotheses or thoughts, or either of you?
No, I think what I think about is just what I've seen, probably in terms of age, similarly, generationally, and the discomfort with vulnerability. I remember my Nana, who had a late term loss, stillborn, and then after I had my loss, and I convalesced at her house, and friends from our grief group would come over when I was there on bed rest with my daughter, to check on me and support me, and we would talk about our shared losses based on our experience from our grief group. And she was baffled, why are you talking about your losses? She didn't say her son's name for years. I mean, she had since shared with me about him, but she said, after I had him, we did talk about him. And when I would see people on the street, I would walk across the street so I didn't have to talk to them. And so,
yeah,
I think, and I have people that I work with that are much more in touch with their feelings and accessing and recognizing how much they wish, based on their losses of that time and trauma, that they had more access to support and ability to connect and talk about their real experience in a genuine way that CoJourn offers. So I think I definitely can connect with what you're talking about in terms of generation and age. And then I also think the gender piece, I certainly can anecdotally experience it from men in my life, but and also with some of the clients that I've served, that it's a little bit harder to access that part of themselves.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Court?
Yeah, no, I think the gender piece we've talked about here a little bit, and I know we spent some time talking about access to support and mental health and who tends to access support and who doesn't. And I do think there's such a big component there to gender. And I think it's shifting. And I think we see that in our work together with the people we work with. But I think there's still, and again, I don't want to speak on behalf of men or anything like that, but just anecdotally looking at the spaces that exist for emotional discussion and who accesses those. I mean, we've been running our resilience circle for over a year, and we have never explicitly said it's women only. We've only ever had women show up, right? And so I think there could be a lot of ways, right? I think we market the way that we do, and we could look at it from a lot of different lenses, but I know we've intentionally never said this is a group for women only, or it's gender specific or anything like that. But the people who choose to show up and connect, and so I think there is a different level of safety there that might be a little bit harder for some folks to access, and so that would make sense to me too.
And it's a piece of what I talk with some of my clients around the messaging that society gives to men and boys, which is you need to be still today. You need to be tough. You have to be strong, and vulnerability is weakness. I think that's still a very strong message that's consistent in our culture.
In anticipation of thinking about gender, I asked Carl, my co-founder, because he's done some of the work with some of the men who've done CoJourn and his friends and brothers. And I said, I asked for his thoughts. And one of the things he said there's a lot of power for men because it's really action based, and the connection comes more from the working together. and that it's sort of backdoor. I've talked about this already, backdoor connection side. But he also said there's a clear guide and it's a structured conversation, right? And you go in, you both have equal time to share, and you're giving each other peer support and active listening. And he talks a lot about how, as a guy, he was socialized to, like, when you're listening, not just listen to listen, sometimes listen for like fixing it.
We talk about that a lot.
Coming in to be like, well, this is what you need to do. And CoJourn needed to learn to not do that. And the boundaries and structure of it can be really a helpful container to help then create. I'm thinking about, this is a little bit of a jump, but Priya Parker's book, The Art of Gathering, and she says, don't be a chill host, and the importance of having structure to create connection.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Having name tags and an icebreaker, even if people are like, I hate icebreaker, or whatever it is, figuring out a way. But I kind of see CoJourn as like a container, and you have your thing in front of you that you're supposed to do. So you don't have to, it makes it easier, I think, to break norms of socialization, of ways of being.
Yeah, because one of the things that I talk about a lot with some of my clients is that often, and I think Brene Brown talks about this brilliantly, is that so often people offer solutions because I feel like I need to make it better for you because I'm uncomfortable. And really, like, some of the best interventions I've ever experienced personally in my own traumatic journey has been people that have sat beside me and cried with me. That has been the most healing thing that I've experienced. And I feel like that could be probably fairly universal from what, because I just didn't feel alone in it then.
Yeah.
And I felt like the person with me felt like they were willing to hold my pain with me. They weren't afraid of it, which made me feel safe in it to actually express it. And so I just think that, and it comes from a place of love, right? Like, it comes from a place of compassion. But I think if you don't know how to do it, if you don't have the steps to learn how to do it, then you're going to be driven to want to go to those solutions. Yeah. And so I love my mom. Love you, Mom. I know she's listening, but she's a solution girl. So I will also say to my mom when she calls me and she knows, like, I might be ruminating on something, and she'll start giving me solutions, and I'll say, pause, Mom. I'm really not looking for solutions. I'm super capable of coming to those on my own. I just need you to listen right now.
Yeah, way to ask for what you want, and give clear direction. That's such a powerful move.
How valuable, right? Because it is. And that's what we talk to people about all the time too, is that you kind of get to know what you need. And we can also help shape that and say, right? And so that's what I love what you're talking about with this, Molly. Is like, I think there's so much safety in a predictable structure, and it allows people to walk in feeling like they kind of know what they're getting. They know what to expect. There might be all these other magical things that happen as a result, but like, at my core, if I can go in knowing, like, here's the task and what I'm here to do, I do think it allows us to enter into that with a bit of an expectation, and it just creates that container and that safety like you're talking about.
So what do you feel like have been the biggest takeaways that people have experienced from their CoJourn journey?
We initially did some qualitative research on the people who participated, and there were like 7 themes of benefits or the takeaways that people have gotten. And the 2 we anticipated, which were follow through on areas they wanted to grow or on things, and then a deeper connection with somebody, or creating a confidant. Some of the ones that were surprising or that I hadn't anticipate was the gift of supporting someone else. And there's research, and then we found the research to back it, right? In terms of, like, when we help someone else through a hard time, it benefits us more than if we're the one receiving the support.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the unique parts of around the reciprocity piece of the model, and the gift of being inspired by someone else's growth, which then makes us want to grow ourselves. So when Carl and I were first partners, and then learning from them. Right. Sure. And so Carl made a goal. He was working on connecting with himself and others. And, one goal was to take his mom to lunch and really ask her real questions about her life, or hang out with his brothers and not just resort to joking and laughing, but, try being a little more vulnerable or hearing more about them. And he made a goal at Thanksgiving to pretend it was his last one. with his parents. And in order, not in a morbid way, but to like get himself out of the bedroom reading his book and help his mom chop the vegetable, really not taking people for granted. And then I copied it, and I still copy it to this day. I always make that a goal before holidays. Like, it's a new way of presence. So I would never have learned that if I hadn't had that reciprocal relationship with Carl. And so people talk about that. The other is the benefits of the data. So at the end, like if it's a year, we have a tracking spreadsheet people can use, or they write down their own. You have a whole year documented of your ups, your downs, your goal, like what you were working on, and all that can be mined from a learning that can be mined from that. I know now, I think I knew this before, but really intentionally, I call it the fall hollows, like a little seasonal depression in the fall. It's like allergies, the light changing, my energy goes away. And I now know, like, I make CoJourn goals directly related to that. Like, I let myself snooze for 10 minutes in the morning, and I listen to this little 10-minute thing, and I know that really is supportive for me. Or I stay home and let myself sleep a little more than I do in the summer, because I always have the same expectations in the fall. So that data. And then the last is the benefit of practicing the skills of CoJourn. And so we have so many people say, I'm a better listener now.
Sure.
And, both in terms of the what was that? You said the fixer, but what was the word you used, Erin? I loved it. Solution finder. But also, like, for example, I'm a relator. I'll say, oh, that happened to me too. And then I share my story before the person gets, so I think all of these are muscles that we need to build. They're not like, I am now a great listener. And so people get to lean in on being a better listener, learning how to support someone else without coaching them, and practicing self-compassion. And really getting a chance to remind somebody else of that. And so that was one of the takeaways. I mean, there are a lot of individual stories that I've seen that have been really powerful, but like in a general way, having those containers. And the last thing I'll say, we've launched CoJourn at work, and really, working in workplaces for people to build those connections within the workplaces. And the takeaway of the benefits of people getting a chance to go after personal professional goals and with a colleague, and weaving in more of those closer relationships to increase employee engagement and increase individuals' well-being as well as organizational well-being.
That's awesome.
Very awesome. Yeah, I'm super excited to keep hearing about that in this, right? Because I think this is this unique space where all of the worlds are merging, right? I know Erin and I talk a lot about just our therapy background, but also consulting business. And then you have this sort of whole CoJourn thing that overlaps so nicely. And now it's being done in the workplace. So I'm just so excited to keep hearing about it as you roll it all out.
So Molly, do you want to share with us a story about someone who went through a CoJourn journey that can help the listeners sort of understand the full journey?
Yeah, I would love to. The one that comes to mind is we co-wrote a book called CoJourn, Harnessing the Power of Connection to Tune into Your Wisdom, Achieve Your Goals, and Create the Life You Want. And it came out in 2019, and we are just in the process of releasing our new edition. The official release date will be July 15th. So we have the new edition has 21 contributors writing about how they've used CoJourn. Awesome. And one of the people who wrote in the first edition, her name is Ruby Maddox. And she writes about how she used CoJourn to go full throttle. That was her guiding theme. And she was an entrepreneur and had a vision of building a nonprofit, which is now called Leaders of the Free World, to do leadership development and growth for young Black men. And part of the mission of the organization is that the young men go for a couple weeks to Ghana for leadership development and then come back to the U.S. and have virtual trainings. And when Ruby had the idea, she was one of our first CoJourn participants, paired with Angelica Castro, who's one of our current CoJourn facilitators, and made goals like, this week I'm going to send 3 emails to potential advisors for this nonprofit, or really breaking down working toward being an entrepreneur with these tiny micro goals, going full throttle. And she really actually showed up for him in a big way. And, after a year, she was able to launch Leaders of the Free World. So it launched 10 years ago. And I think I share that story because I had such admiration for Ruby's journey. And she just did a lot of work for CoJourn in different ways. She would make videos for us. And she always said, I've written 7 years of my life through CoJourn. So after that year, she did a different one. But tragically, Ruby passed away a year ago unexpectedly at 45. And so it was destroyed, all of us. This really, really devastating loss. And about a month and a half ago, I got a chance to be part of a celebration of her life with her mom and sister and celebrating 10 years of Leaders of the Free World and this incredible organization she built. She had a partner after the first few years who is leading it now. And seeing all of the impact that her idea and going full throttle, the results of the ripple effects of her life, her legacy was so moving. We actually dedicated the new edition of the book to her. And and so her story feels one that on many levels that is really important to share. And an illustration of how CoJourn can help have like a seed of an idea build into something bigger, the impact of which we may never know, even in our lifetime.
Incredible. That's so powerful.
So powerful. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. And that's so much of what our work is often in therapy. Sometimes you don't necessarily see the full benefit of the work that you do.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Clients. So it's what a privilege to get to see her legacy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm sorry for your loss.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, I'm so grateful for this conversation, for this connection, for this friendship. That it's just beginning.
Yeah. Baby stages.
Baby stages. So many beach years and concerts and
yeah, we're gonna have fun in the future.
Yeah,
all of us.
More pods. I don't know.
I love it all.
I don't know. The world is our oyster.
Pre-pod singing
opportunities. What could happen?
But it's such a gift to get to do this with you all. As soon as I learned about your work, there was so much values alignment. And, the road not taken for me was social work and becoming a therapist. So I have
been awesome at it.
Oh, thank you. That's really nice. And who knows, maybe in the future. But really love what you're doing and the work of Phoenix Rise Consulting. And there's just so much overlap. So what a fun conversation. Thank you.
I know. Thank you.
Listen, this was one of my favorite things about Molly too, is that I said to Courtney, I was like, I feel like we need to ask Molly to be on the podcast. And it was like, sort of like, she just met us. Who knows if she'll say yes? And Courtney was like, by all means, we should definitely ask her. Molly was an instantaneous yes.
She's like, let me get my calendar.
Zero hesitation. Got her calendar out. Was like,
because she knew. She knew she needed a date, right? You're on it. You're on your game. You knew how to execute.
I told you I got a full body yes. And when I get a full body yes on something, it's moving forward. Yeah.
It's good.
So exciting. Yes. Would you tell us, we like to give our listeners an action step. What's one thing you would encourage our listeners to do over the next years?
Ooh, great question. Okay, this is one that I'm trying to do too. So maybe we can all do this together.
Yes.
And we didn't get deeply into the research on connection, but it's so important for our health. And almost none of us are getting the amount of connection we actually need for our social as humans. And so I'm inviting the listeners to give yourself a permission slip to use for those moments when you have like work that you still have to do, or the house still needs to be cleaned, yet there's an opportunity to connect with somebody, whether it is a friend, whether someone's calling you on the phone and you only have 3 minutes before something. Research shows that it's great to just hear someone's voice and say, I only have 2 minutes, I can't talk, but let me call you back later. That can make a huge difference as opposed to just letting it go to voicemail. But reaching for those connections, last Friday, I had a last minute invite to like go to watch a World Cup soccer game outdoors, and I was like, I have work to do. And then I was like, this is a friend I love, I haven't connected with, and I made the choice to go. And it brought back my energy and my vitality and my joy. And I know we all have balance with life, with work and things. And there are always places where maybe we spend less time scrolling on our phone and reach for that connection. And I think it can have just incredible outcomes for all of us if we lean toward it.
I love that. And that is such an interesting piece of research that I hadn't heard before around just hearing someone's voice, because often I will do that where I don't have time to talk to someone, so I'll just let it go to voicemail, or I'll send the text like, can't talk right now, I'll call you back. So that's such a good pro tip. Thank you.
I loved it. And I feel like such a powerful one coming off of our burnout episode, which we did before this, and recognizing, because I think when you think of what that, for me, when I think of what comes and what gets in the way of me connecting in those moments, like you're talking about work, I'm about to run into something right in my head. I'm like, I can't split my attention right now. Like I have this to finish and I have this and so much is going on. I'm carrying so much. How do I handle talking to this person and then doing that? Like it just all starts to kind of bubble up as overwhelm. But then ultimately, every time I do choose connection in those moments, I feel so much better, even for 2 seconds. And I often let like the details, like I had a friend invite me last minute to a concert on Monday, and it was outdoors and it was raining. And I probably several times was just like, okay, is this going to work? How do I make this work? And then I had such a good time. I was so happy I did it. We sat in traffic for like an hour trying to get there, like the whole thing. But we were like in the car chatting and talking and but my brain was just going to all the logistics at that time of just, how is this going to work? And, I have work this week. And I just had so many things running through my head because I felt like I was kind of coming from that burnout place. And that was one of those moments I was like, I'm doing this. And I was so happy I did. So you saying that just reminds me I have to keep that on top of mind.
One other thing to add is there's also research around micro connections and those, and like some people call it social snacking, but how good it is for us, even just to make eye contact with the barista at the coffee shop. Or I often will try to ask people's names and then I write it on my phone app, and then I get to come back and say, hi, Lucia, great to see you. And I feel so much, and it was really astounding for me to learn about what happens in our nervous system, like as humans, those little moments. So even if you're like navigating a really busy schedule, to take that extra minute to chat with somebody or say hello or make eye contact and even smile, all of those pieces can add up. It doesn't have to be, a whole night when you really can't pull that off. One piece I read by Cassie Killam, who wrote the book, The Art of Social Connection, she says to aim for at least 1 hour of human connection a day. And we need diversity in people in our life. So if with 5 different people a week, I believe. And so that part also, like I might be with my partner all the time, or I might be with my parent, but to like go have coffee with that friend I haven't seen in 6 months, or, and that part is part of our well-being practice too.
I love that. I'm curious what you think of that, and you tend to be, I think, more extroverted than me. But as therapists, it's very interesting, I find, because we can spend 8+ hour day talking, connecting, right? And it's not for us to connect. Not that we don't get the benefit. I think there's a lot of ways in which I benefit from every conversation I have with anyone I'm working with. But I'll also find that I will like leave here and have days where I'm like, I just want to sit by myself in my room. And I think that's valuable sometimes, and I need to find that balance. But what's it like for you, like trying to then also build in time for your own connection with others for yourself? Do you notice anything about that being difficult or challenging after like a long day of work or something? Because I struggle with that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, especially on the days, as you know, I have a couple days a week that I will see 8 to 10 clients, and I'll work 12 hours. And I'm so beat by the time I get home on those days, emotionally, physically, like just, I don't have a lot left at all. And all I want to do is speak to no one and watch dumb TV. Like I don't want to just go to bed, but I need to like shut my brain off and watch really dumb TV or read a book and shut down. So yeah, I do find that I have a time.
It's hard. Yeah.
To connect.
I love what you said about, what did you say, micro connect? What did you call it?
Social snacking. Are you kidding me? I will never not call it social snacking.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I wrote it down. I'm going to make a sign, social snacking, and put it in our waiting room.
I love that idea.
Canva is going to get a social snacking sign. It's going to be framed. I freaking love that.
Put some little directions on it, what people do. I love that. But I think that's so helpful to think about, because I think there are ways, even in this world, that can feel, for whatever reason, taxing for us, right? It's not just because we're therapists that we do what we do, right? There's 1,000 reasons why everybody has that, struggles to have connection, like for themselves sometimes. But I love that idea, social snacking. That's so cool.
When you can experiment and figure out what level, like works for you. Sometimes we need to connect with ourselves, right? And that's also so important. It's not always opting for out there. It could be slowing down. Yeah, I was feeling you after just like a day of facilitating. I'm wrecked, and I'm like, I cannot talk to another. And it wouldn't be good for my well-being to force myself to go meet up with friends. But I think it's also knowing ourselves and what fills us. Some people are filled by big gatherings with a lot of people, and some really need a one-on-one coffee, or a walk, or some in between. And some of that, Cassie Killam talks about 4 different types of people around social connection, around what we need. And I found that really helpful. It's about really knowing your type. One likes just a few core people who they have deep engagement with. One social butterfly, I think, likes a lot of more, it's not universal for everyone. Yet she argues, and I agree, that almost none of us are getting what we actually need at this moment in time in terms of embodied real-time human connection.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah. So our takeaways.
We got takeaways, of course.
Takeaways, yeah. First one is, connection doesn't just happen, it needs structure. Consistency and intention are what create depth.
Reciprocity changes the experience of support. Being both seen and seeing someone else builds stronger connection.
Small wins matter more than big breakthroughs. Growth happens in small, repeated moments over time.
Self-compassion, it's a big one.
Big one.
Is a part of connection. People are more open, consistent, and honest when judgment is removed.
So true. But self-compassion is hard, as we talked about. Many people don't know how to build deep connection. This is especially true where there has been little modeling or access.
And you don't need more connection. You need more consistent connection. Depth comes from repetition, not volume.
One relationship can make a meaningful difference. You don't need to change everything to feel more connected. So our closing thought is, connection is not just something we want more of. It's something that we can learn to build intentionally, consistently, and together. And CoJourn can help us do that. So Molly, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
And will you share your website? We can also put it on, so if people want to purchase the book or learn more, or reach out to you, they have access.
Absolutely. It's www.CoJourn.org.
Awesome.
And we're on LinkedIn at CoJourn and Instagram at CoJourn International.
Beautiful. Check out the book. It's awesome.
It's really good. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for being here. This has been so fun.
All right.
We'll see you in a couple weeks.